Okay, so we're here today with Chris Madrigal of Madrigal Vineyards, just north of St. Helena in Napa Valley. And Chris is going to tell us a little bit about his family history and his vineyard, and then we're going to taste through a lineup of his wines. So Chris, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it a great deal.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to be at the new shop. This is my second time in Frederick, and happy to be here. Happy to share a little bit about what we do. Obviously, I'm a long ways from home. I'm on the opposite side of the country in Napa Valley. My family's been in Napa Valley since 1938. They immigrated in the early 1930s from Mexico, and we're always looking for the promised land. And so they eventually made it to Napa Valley. And basically, my father was one of 12 kids, and they were a migrant family that picked grapes and apples and walnuts and prunes, and made a living that way as a family. When my father graduated from Calistoga High School, where we currently live and the winery's at, he joined the military and was away for 20 years in the Navy and then in the Army. And in 1974, short of his retirement, we came back. We were stationed back on the West Coast, and we used to come to Calistoga every weekend, where my grandmother lived, and he started doing grape projects. So that by the time he retired in 1976, he started a vineyard company on its own. So he managed vineyards, development, taking care of the vineyards for other people. I grew up in sort of that business, and when I graduated from high school, Calistoga High School, I went to UC Davis, studied viticulture and enology. And actually, when I first got out of college, I was like, I don't want to do anything to do with grapes and wine. And I was a union carpenter in the Bay Area. And my father, I had to commute about 2 hours each way every day. My father came to me one day and said, I'm going to pay you less, but you'll never have to commute again. So I said, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And I started in the vineyard business. Started running crews, developing vineyards, and sort of growing our vineyard business. But it wasn't, something inside me was saying, I was sort of torn. In youth, you have this energy and this want, and I just wasn't satisfied with delivering grapes. And then it became the genius of the winemaker and the winery that had it. And I saw some of these guys that were making wines, and I know they were good at what they were doing, but it didn't seem like it was much of a jump up to be able to make wine. So in 1995, I bought enough grapes for 500 cases of Petit Syrah, and just sort of on a wing and a prayer, we started making wine. And it was just this process of just building every year a little bit, and sort of the dream of keeping going. So as I started developing the brand, I thought that was great, but then I really wanted a winery, and vineyards. And the first part, we bought our first 10 acres in 1994, and then the idea was to build a winery on it. But subsequent to buying the first 10 acres, the adjacent 30 acres came up. So the land is the most important. So we bought another 30 acres before we built the winery. So finally, the dream came true in 2007. We built the winery. So we're in this will be our 5th crush at the new estate winery. And a lot of the wines we'll be tasting today, actually all the wines except for one are 100% made at the new winery. So it's we are in relation to the Napa Valley. We're in the upper portion of the valley. We're halfway between Calistoga and St. Helena, right on the main highway. So it's we live the dream now. So a lot of work. Nobody's getting rich in the wine business, but I'll tell you, I eat really well, drink really well.
And so let me ask you, is your first project Petit Syrah?
Very first project. Love Petit Syrah. It's what put us on the map. I think we make excellent Petit Syrah. It's just a limited market. Everybody drinks Cabernet Sauvignon. And people that love Petit Syrah love Petit Syrah. But for every Petit Syrah drinker, there's 1,000 Cabernet drinkers. So it's a limited market. We sell more Cabernet Sauvignon than we do Petit Syrah. But that doesn't necessarily mean our Cabernet Sauvignon is better than our Petit Syrah. But yes, I still love Petit Syrah. I remember the first year we went to go make Petit Syrah, we had a consulting winemaker named Jack Rhino. And we went to him and we said, we'd like to make a soft Petit Syrah. And our original 95 Petit Syrah was basically sucked your face out for the first 10 years that we had it released. Yeah. I do love Petit Syrah, but we've gone in a lot of different directions since then. We're involved in things like this year we released a Gewürztraminer and a Tempranillo. So really, a lot of what I do is about fun, experimentation, things like that.
Outstanding. So, okay, how about getting us through some of the wines that you poured today?
Sure. First, I'd like to say we brought more wines here, but during the tasting that we were here, they drank all of them, and you guys in Frederick like good wine. So we have 5 wines to taste, and I thought we could go through them really quickly, and I could just tell you a little bit about it. I won't be long-winded about it. The first one is a little 2010 Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc. It is not an estate vineyard. It is from a vineyard called the Yont Mill Vineyard. It's a certified organic vineyard. When you taste this wine, it has a real creaminess that people think that it's been aged on oak, but it hasn't. It's 100% stainless steel. So we picked this very ripe, and it has these tones of guava and mango. Later in the summer, it becomes more like peaches and melons. So cheers.
Cheers. I love the nose on it. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's got a touch. I would say it was a very odd year for Sauvignon Blanc. It's got a bit of herbaceousness, but it's backed up with a lot of that tropical guava and things like that. So nice wine. Yeah. Well, I won't keep this Blanc, so we'll just kind of go with this. The second wine. This is a wine that's usually just winery only. I have to say, I think it's stylistically and it's a very good wine. This is 2008 Napa Valley Chardonnay. I'm not necessarily the right guy to talk about Chardonnay. I'm not a huge fan of Chardonnay, but our assistant winemaker loves Chardonnay, and so we do about 70 cases of this at the tasting room, and I drink almost 0, but it's still a very nice wine. It's in this particular vintage, it's the classic malolactic butter. It's aged 12 months on I think it's 100%, 80 to 100% new French oak. So it's a classic California Chardonnay style. These grapes come from the Carney region of Napa Valley.
Well,
so you need something a little more substantial.
Right. And what I like about it is it's not overly oaked.
Yes. But it does have a fair amount of, on the nose it does have a fair
It's integrated well.
The third wine, this is our least expensive red wine. And just because it's our least expensive red wine doesn't mean that it's our least tasty wine. This is one of my favorite wines that we make at the winery. It's 2008 Napa Valley Zinfandel. In a current time where Zinfandels are getting more ripe and more alcoholic, they've almost become more of an aperitif wine. My philosophy in particular on this wine is this is made for food. And this is, when we think about how we're going to make this wine, we're thinking of pasta, with red sauce, like a spicy bolognese sauce. And so there's nice acid, nice fruit, but it doesn't overpower a pasta dish. So got like that dark black raspberry characteristic. Just very nice, well balanced wine.
And almost a white pepper characteristic of the spice.
Yeah, definitely, and it definitely has that spice. Sometimes it gets to that overly spicy character, but it's just got that back palate spice, really nice. And how subtle white pepper is, definitely. The third wine is I have a love-hate relationship with this wine. Not that I don't like Cabernet Sauvignon, I love Cabernet Sauvignon. This is from the 2006 vintage. 2006 vintage is one of those vintages that was a little bit shunned by the press, just because I think the main reason, and in retrospect, it is the main reason, these wines were very big tannic wines. And the 07 wines were these juicy, plush, really ready to drink wines. So in a good and perfect world, we should have released the 2006 wines after the 2007. So this was released a little over a year ago, and now this is really starting to come in its own. The tannins are starting to soften. And this is, in 10 years, people will start to talk about maybe that 07 wasn't that much better than the 06 vintage. So this traditionally is more like cherry, currant, a little back chocolate action to it.
Absolutely.
Definitely got a little more chocolate than I thought.
So, what is your thought about the 08 versus the 07?
Well, I I hate to be the guy that always goes, the next year is better than the next. But '07, because the press talks so highly about the '07, you're like thinking that '06 and '08 are just kind of like these garbage vintages. The Zinfandel was an '08. Everything that we're doing '08, we're just starting to come out with our '08s. They're fantastic. They're, instead of being as flashy on the front with fruit, they have great fruit to them, but they have this great depth of from beginning to end palate. Delicious stuff. I really enjoy the '08s. This is the 2006, another of that vintage that everybody is ready to pass on. This is a Bordeaux blend that we do called Sonnet 63. It's always 3 varieties: Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. For instance, in the 2005, it was as much as 60% Cabernet Franc. In this vintage, it's 80% Cabernet Sauvignon, and then in the 2007, it's 60% Merlot. So it doesn't matter to me and my team what the combination is. We're more looking at, when we blend these wines, we're thinking about value. We went from a seamless from the nose to the finish. So this usually turns to take on more like currant, chocolate, dark plum, cherry kind of characters, and needs a little bit of fat because it's a little more tannin. So it's like a ribeye, terrific stuff.
And then cherry really, and then plum really jump off the nose.
Big cherry. It's definitely, a lot of times when you did this wine, it tastes like a chocolate covered cherry.
Excellent. And then you also had a Petite Sirah.
I brought Reserve Petite Sirah. It comes from a single vineyard. Little different philosophy on them. A lot of people know our Petite Sirahs, but Reserve Petite Sirahs, we use single vineyards and we use French oak. And what the French oak has done, I have a kind of a philosophy change on American oak with Petite Sirah. French oak really helps to sweeten that front fruit on it. It really does a nice job. We also brought our single vineyard Las Viñas del Señor Cab, which is our estate Cabernet Sauvignon. And that was really tasted really well too. So.
Excellent. Yeah, very good. And then last question for you is, a lot in the press right now about the growing conditions in 2011. So late bud break, lots of rain. Are you seeing the same issues at your vineyards, or?
No doubt about it. When I got here so we're into June, and when I came here on Monday, it was still raining. It's almost unheard of to have rain in June. And we had late rains, but it doesn't really affect you until bloom. And so a lot of people don't realize this, but the clusters do actually bloom, even though you don't see the flowers. You can smell the bloom. And as I was leaving, the bloom was in full. So what happens is the rain starts to knock off the blooms and cut into our production. So it's not a complete disaster, but I like to start out with a whole crop and then decide what I don't want, then a reduced crop, and then go from there. But hopefully it stops raining now. So I went from about 65 degrees in Napa Valley to about 102 when I got here in Baltimore, with humidity.
Global warming.
Could be.
Well, thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much.